Welcome. I'm so glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here with you.
Whether you're, prepping for a meeting, taking a walk, or you just have this insatiable curiosity about how stories work, you are exactly where you need to be.
Absolutely.
Because we've designed today's deep dive specifically for you as an English-speaking club practice session.
It's a highly effective approach for language learners.
It really is. We are taking a brilliant shortcut to being well-informed while simultaneously practicing English comprehension and literary analysis.
Right, because knowledge is most valuable when it's actually understood and applied.
Mhm.
By analyzing a simplified text, you get to focus entirely on the mechanics of the story and the power of direct communication.
Exactly. So the mission for our session today is to explore Mark Twain's iconic story, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer.
A true classic.
But, and this is the cool part, we're doing this by analyzing the Penguin Reader's Level 1 edition.
Right, the one adapted by Jacqueline Keel.
Yes. Which means the vocabulary is intentionally simplified for English learners. It relies on very basic sentence structures.
But the fascinating thing you'll discover is that simple words do not limit the depth of the ideas.
Not at all. I mean, we are talking about a story featuring a midnight murder, kids escaping to an island, a tense courtroom trial, and finding $12,000 in buried pirate treasure.
It's packed with action.
And all of it is communicated perfectly with foundational English.
Before we jump into the narrative, though, let's establish the context surrounding the author. It directly informs the world you are about to step into.
Oh, for sure.
Because Mark Twain is actually a pen name. His real name was Samuel Clemens. He was born in 1835 and grew up in a town called Hannibal, Missouri.
Right on the water.
Exactly. If you look at a map of the United States, Hannibal sits right on the edge of the Mississippi River. And back then, that massive, powerful waterway essentially served as the main highway of the 19th century.
That river is practically the main character of his childhood. Samuel Clemens spent his early years just watching these giant steamboats navigate the water.
He didn't just observe them either. He eventually spent 2 years working on them.
Right. And that lived experience, the danger, the colorful characters, the sense of constant motion, it spilled directly into his writing.
He really had a remarkably adventurous life. After his time on the river, he traveled out west to Nevada to look for silver and gold.
Which didn't quite work out for him.
No, he didn't strike it rich in the mines, but he ended up working for a newspaper, which is where he first started using the name Mark Twain.
That's such a great detail.
By 1876, he was living in New York and published The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. He followed it up in 1884 with The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
And those books cemented his legacy. Today, people from all over the world travel to Hannibal just to see his childhood home.
And the actual physical cave that inspired the terrifying climax of this story.
It is incredible how a specific childhood in a specific small town resonated globally. And that's what makes this adaptation so valuable for you as a language learner.
It proves that timeless themes, fear, loyalty, greed, manipulation, they can all be communicated without a dictionary of complex jargon.
Okay, let's unpack this by jumping right into chapter 1.
Let's do it.
We're introduced to our main character, Tom Sawyer. He lives with his Aunt Polly because his parents have passed away. And his personality is established in about 3 sentences.
He hates school.
He hates working.
And he only wants to play and have adventures.
Naturally. So on a Friday, she skips school entirely to go down to the river.
But actions have consequences, and Aunt Polly is furious when she finds out.
Oh, she is so mad.
As a punishment, she tells him he cannot play on Saturday. While all the other children are out enjoying their weekend, Tom is ordered to stay in the yard and paint a massive wooden fence.
We have to spend some time on this scene because it is legendary. It's Saturday morning. Tom is miserable. He starts painting. A boy named Jim walks by, and Tom tries to pawn the work off on him.
But Jim is busy fetching water.
Right. Then the real target arrives. A boy named Ben walks up to the house. Ben is eating a piece of fruit, and he starts teasing Tom. He basically says, "I'm going swimming, and you have to stay here and work."
Let's look at Tom's reaction, because this is where we see the concept of reverse psychology in action.
He's so clever.
For those unfamiliar with the term, reverse psychology is a technique where you get someone to do what you want by suggesting the exact opposite.
Right.
When Ben teases him, Tom doesn't complain, doesn't beg for help. He simply continues painting and calmly changes the narrative. He tells Ben, "This isn't work. I like painting."
It is a masterclass in framing. He flips the script completely. Ben is suddenly confused, and that confusion turns into curiosity. He asks Tom, can I paint too?
Now, if Tom says yes immediately, the illusion is broken.
Exactly. So Tom plays hard to get. He says no. He claims Aunt Polly needs it done perfectly and implies that only he has the skill to do it right.
He treats a miserable chore like an exclusive privilege.
What's fascinating here is how Twain illustrates a fundamental law of human behavior, artificial scarcity.
Yes, we value things more when we believe they are rare or hard to obtain. Tom creates this artificial scarcity out of thin air. He makes painting a fence seem like a high-status activity.
And Ben completely falls for it. He starts begging, he insists he's a good painter, and he even offers Tom his piece of fruit just for the chance to hold the brush.
Think about how you can apply this takeaway to your own life. Have you ever had a boring task at work or a chore at home and just dreaded doing it?
We all have.
Tom's trick teaches us that the value of an activity is entirely dependent on how it's framed.
If you frame a difficult English conversation as a terrifying test, you'll dread it. If you frame it as an exclusive game or a puzzle, suddenly you want to engage with it.
That's a great way to look at it. So Tom takes Ben's fruit, sits back in the shade, and watches Ben do his punishment for him.
And the brilliance continues because the neighborhood boys keep walking by. They see Ben having a great time, and they want to join in.
By the end of the day, Tom has collected a small pile of childhood treasures, mostly random items and food, and the boys have painted the fence 3 times over.
The language used here in the Level 1 text is crucial for you to study.
It really is. The sentences are short. I like painting. Can I paint too? No, you can't.
There are no complicated conditional clauses. Yet, those simple words facilitate a highly sophisticated psychological manipulation.
When Tom goes inside and tells Aunt Polly the fence is finished, she is completely shocked. She looks outside, sees this beautiful white fence, and immediately lets him go play.
It's a very funny, lighthearted introduction to Tom. He's a hustler, but a charming one. But as he heads out into the town, the social dynamics become much more complicated.
He walks past a house and sees a new girl in the yard. She has yellow hair and blue eyes. This is Becky.
Ah, Becky.
From a literary standpoint, Becky represents the civilized, respectable side of Tom's world. She's well-dressed, she comes from a prominent family, and she operates strictly within the boundaries of society.
And Tom is instantly captivated by her. He tries to show off to get her attention, but she goes inside her house without speaking to him.
Contrast that immediately with the next character we meet in Chapter 2.
Right. Tom is walking to school, and he runs into Huckleberry Finn. Huck is the exact opposite of Becky.
He has no home. He never goes to school. His clothes are huge and dirty. The adults in the town actively dislike him and tell their children not to play with him.
But Tom likes Huck.
We need to pause and analyze what Huck represents to a kid like Tom.
Okay.
Tom feels imprisoned by Aunt Polly's rules, by the requirement to paint fences, and by the walls of the schoolhouse. Huck is the embodiment of absolute freedom.
He is the wild counterpart to Becky's civilization.
Exactly. He answers to no one. It makes perfect sense that Tom is drawn to him, because Huck is living the life Tom daydreams about when he's staring out the classroom window.
So Huck is waiting in the street, and he casually suggests they go on an adventure. And what is this homeless child's idea of a fun time?
Going to the local graveyard at exactly midnight.
Which is wild. Any normal kid would be terrified. But Tom thinks this sounds amazing. He agrees to meet Huck at 11 o'clock that night.
Because he stops to finalize these midnight plans, Tom arrives late to school. The teacher is already angry and demands an explanation.
Tom could have easily lied. Instead, he announces to the entire classroom, I'm late because I talked to Huck Finn.
This is essentially a social crime in this town.
The teacher is so enraged by this association that he punishes Tom by forcing him to sit on the girls' side of the room.
Which is exactly what Tom was hoping for, because the only empty seat is right next to Becky.
He sits down, introduces himself, and bypasses all the normal polite conversation. He writes on a small blackboard, I love you, do you love me?
And she writes back, yes.
It is so fast and so purely childlike. They agree to stay in the schoolyard during the lunch break instead of going home.
It's a charming moment of young romance. But Tom's lack of social awareness immediately destroys it.
Oh no, it's so bad.
While they're talking in the empty schoolyard, Tom casually mentions that Becky will walk to school with him every day, just like his old girlfriend Amy used to do.
It's the ultimate relationship mistake. You never bring up the ex-girlfriend when you are trying to impress someone new.
Becky is instantly furious. She asks if he is still in love with Amy.
Tom tries to dig himself out of the hole, insisting he only loves Becky now, but the damage is permanent. She refuses to speak to him and storms off.
Tom is so emotionally crushed by this rejection that he decides to skip the rest of the school day entirely.
He spends the afternoon feeling sorry for himself, but he has a prior commitment.
Right, at 11 o'clock that night, he sneaks out of his bedroom window. He meets Huck in the dark, and they walk to the graveyard.
This scene marks a violent shift in the tone of the narrative.
Up until this point, we've been dealing with childhood mischief, painting fences, and schoolyard crushes. The graveyard introduces something entirely different.
It's pitch black. The boys are hiding behind some large trees. Suddenly, they hear voices. 3 men walk into the graveyard.
The boys recognize them. It's the town doctor, a local man named Muff Potter, and a dangerous character named Injun Joe.
The doctor and Injun Joe start arguing. They are talking very angrily. And then, without any warning, the unthinkable happens. Injun Joe pulls out a knife and kills the doctor.
Think about the impact of that moment, especially within the confines of a level 1 reader.
Yeah.
The author doesn't use gruesome adjectives or complex metaphorical language. The sentence is blunt and direct. Injun Joe killed the doctor with his knife.
The simplicity of the language actually heightens the shock. For you as a learner, this demonstrates that you do not need advanced vocabulary to convey intense trauma.
The boys are absolutely paralyzed by terror. They watch a man get murdered right in front of them.
The moment the men are distracted, Tom and Huck turn and run blindly through the dark until they reach the safety of an old building near Tom's house.
Huck is the one who verbalizes the horrific reality of their situation. He says, "We can't talk about this. Injun Joe can find us and kill us too."
They make a solemn vow never to tell anyone what they saw. This introduces a profound psychological burden.
Tom is no longer just a kid avoiding homework. He's an accomplice to a secret, possessing knowledge that could get him killed. He is carrying an adult burden in a child's mind.
And the situation becomes infinitely worse the next day. The town discovers the doctor's body, but they don't arrest Injun Joe.
The men in the town go to Muff Potter, who was in the graveyard but was knocked unconscious during the fight, and they tell him, "You're a bad man. You killed the doctor."
Muff Potter is completely framed for the murder, and he believes he might have actually done it in his confusion.
Put yourself in Tom's shoes. How do you go back to sitting in a classroom learning spelling words when you know an innocent man is going to be locked in a cage, or worse, for a crime he didn't commit?
The killer is walking freely around your town, and if you speak up to save the innocent man, the killer will target you next. It's an impossible moral dilemma.
The stress physically affects Tom. He can't sleep. He's tossing and turning.
This intense anxiety bleeds into Chapter 3, which is appropriately titled A Bad Day. Becky is still refusing to speak to him, and the guilt over Muff Potter is eating him alive.
He wakes up and decides he simply cannot face the world. He tells Aunt Polly he is terribly sick and needs to stay in bed.
Aunt Polly genuinely cares for Tom, but her methods of showing it are a bit misguided.
In the 19th century, there was a common belief that if a medicine tasted horrific, it must be working. She brings Tom some awful-tasting liquid medicine and forces him to take it.
He absolutely hates it. As soon as she turns her back, he's looking for a way to get rid of it. Enter Peter, the family cat.
The cat wanders into the bedroom, probably looking for a place to sleep.
Tom looks at the cat, looks at the medicine, and says, "Peter, have some medicine." He literally pours the awful liquid into the cat's mouth.
The resulting chaos is a perfect example of comic relief. The cat reacts exactly how you would expect an animal to react to terrible-tasting chemicals.
It goes completely frantic, bouncing off the walls, and finally launches itself out the open bedroom window and into the yard below.
Aunt Polly hears the commotion, rushes in, figures out what Tom did, and angrily sends him straight to school.
I want to highlight why this scene is so important for the pacing of the story. We just survived a terrifying midnight murder and a town turning against an innocent man.
The emotional tension is incredibly high. If the story stayed at that level of darkness, it would be exhausting.
Exactly. The author uses the physical comedy of the cat jumping out the window to relieve that tension. It allows you to breathe and laugh before plunging back into the drama.
It's a classic narrative palate cleanser. And it transitions us back to the schoolyard, where the emotional stakes are different, but still feel life or death to a child.
Tom arrives at school early, hoping to finally patch things up with Becky. He waits by the fence. She arrives, sees him, completely ignores him, and walks right into the building.
He is devastated. He decides right then and there that society has rejected him, so he's going to reject society.
He walks away from the school. On his way out of town, he bumps into his friend Joe Harper. Joe is also having a miserable day because his mother yelled at him for something he didn't do.
You have these two boys both feeling deeply unappreciated by the women in their lives.
When people feel misunderstood by the world, their instinct is often to isolate themselves. Tom looks at Joe and proposes the ultimate childhood rebellion. Let's run away.
They head down toward the river, the boundary between civilization and the wilderness. And sitting there by the water is Huck Finn.
They ask Huck to join them. Huck, who already lives entirely outside the rules of society, doesn't need to be convinced.
He says, yes, let's go across the river. We can have a good adventure there.
They gather some stolen food, find a small wooden boat, and row themselves across the massive river to an uninhabited island.
Chapter 4 is entirely about this island escape. For the first few days, it's a utopia. They go swimming, they eat when they want, and most importantly, there are no teachers and no Aunt Polly.
They feel completely liberated. But this illusion of a perfect, consequence-free life is shattered on the afternoon of the second day.
They're playing near the water when they hear a deep, rhythmic sound echoing across the river.
It's one of the massive steamboats, and it's moving slowly near their island. They hide in the bushes and listen to the men shouting on the deck.
Tom suddenly pieces it together. He whispers to the others, listen, the men on the boat are talking about us.
The men are dragging the river. One of them shouts, "The boys are in the river. They're dead."
This is the perfect moment to define a vital storytelling tool, dramatic irony.
Okay, let's explain that.
Dramatic irony occurs when the audience, or in this case the boys themselves, knows something crucial that the other characters do not. We know the boys are safe on the island eating stolen food. The entire town believes they have tragically drowned.
Hearing that changes everything for Tom. That night, while Joe and Huck are fast asleep, Tom is kept awake by his conscience.
The reality of what he has done, making his aunt believe he is dead, finally hits him.
He makes an incredibly dangerous decision. He takes their small boat in the pitch black, rows all the way back across the river, sneaks through the dark streets of his town, and climbs through his own bedroom window.
He doesn't announce himself. Instead, he slides under his bed and hides.
Shortly after, Aunt Polly and several neighbors walk into the room. Tom lies in the dust under the bed and listens to Aunt Polly weeping.
She tells her friends, Tom was a good boy and I loved him. Now he's dead and I'm very sad.
Think about the emotional toll of that moment. He's lying inches away from the woman who raised him, listening to her heartbreak because of a prank he pulled.
He desperately wants to slide out and say, I'm right here, I'm not dead. But he forces himself to stay completely silent until she finally cries herself to sleep.
This is a complex psychological moment. It shows empathy. He clearly feels bad for her pain.
Yet his narcissism and flair for drama override that empathy. Once she's asleep, he sneaks back out the window and rows back to the island.
When he arrives, Joe and Huck are homesick and want to quit the adventure. They miss their bugs and their families.
But Tom refuses to let the adventure end on a quiet note. He gathers them around and pitches a wild idea. Let's wait, he says. Let's go home on Sunday. We can go to church. People are going to be very surprised.
He chooses to let his aunt suffer for 2 more days, simply so he can make a theatrical entrance.
He wants to attend his own funeral. It highlights Tom's deep need to be the center of attention. He doesn't just want to return, he wants to be resurrected in front of an audience.
Sunday arrives, and the church is filled with grieving people. The children are crying, Becky is mourning him, and the minister is giving a sad sermon.
Then the heavy wooden doors at the back of the church swing open, and Tom, Joe, and Huck stroll right down the center aisle.
The shock in the room is absolute. The mourning instantly turns into wild celebration. It's the greatest stunt Tom has ever pulled.
But the euphoria of a dramatic return fades quickly when you have to go back to math class on Monday morning.
Chapter 5 brings us back to the reality of school. Tom is walking around like a celebrity, telling everyone about his island survival.
But his relationship with Becky is still broken. He tries to talk to her, but his pride gets in the way, so he starts openly flirting with his old girlfriend, Amy, to make Becky jealous.
It's pure middle school psychological warfare. Becky retaliates immediately. She loudly invites everyone to an Adventure Day picnic she is planning, making sure to explicitly exclude Tom.
Then she sits on a bench and pretends to read a picture book with a boy named Alfred, giggling and making sure Tom sees them. Tom is furious and jealous.
The tension escalates later that afternoon. Tom waits by the fence, swallows his pride, and actually says, "I'm sorry."
But Becky is too deep into the feud. She refuses his apology and storms into the empty classroom.
And this is where a seemingly minor prop becomes the catalyst for major character growth. The teacher has left a special book on his desk. The text notes that this book wasn't for children.
If you tell a child not to look at something, they're instantly going to look at it.
Exactly. Becky approaches the desk, carefully opens the forbidden book, and starts looking at the pictures. Suddenly, Tom's shadow falls across the doorway.
Becky panics, slams the heavy book shut, and in her haste, violently tears one of the pages in half. She bursts into tears of frustration and runs out of the room, leaving Tom standing there.
When the bell rings and class begins, it doesn't take long for the teacher to notice the damage. He is livid. He holds up the torn book and demands, "Who did this?"
The room goes dead silent. He starts walking down the rows of desks, looking each student in the eye and asking, "Did you do this?"
Every child nervously says no. Finally, he reaches Becky. The suspense in that classroom must have been suffocating. Becky is trembling. She knows she's about to be humiliated and punished in front of everyone.
But just as the teacher demands an answer from her, Tom leaps to his feet and shouts, "I did it! I tore your book."
Let's pause and really evaluate the magnitude of this action.
Look at Tom's behavioral track record. He manipulated Ben to avoid painting a fence. He let his aunt weep over his supposed death just to orchestrate a dramatic church entrance.
His actions have been entirely driven by self-interest. But in this moment, he voluntarily accepts guilt and physical punishment for a crime he did not commit solely to protect someone else.
The teacher drags him to the front of the room, calls him a very bad boy, and forces him to stay after school for hours as a punishment.
But when Tom finally walks out of the building at 5 o'clock, Becky is waiting for him by the fence. She looks at him and says, "You're a very good friend."
They walk home together. He paid a heavy price, but he proved his loyalty and won her back.
This scene perfectly demonstrates why simplified English texts are so powerful for speaking practice. You don't need a 5-paragraph essay to explain self-sacrifice. 3 words at it, you completely alter the trajectory of Tom's character.
Practicing direct, active sentences like this will make your spoken English much more confident and impactful.
That's a brilliant point. The directness forces clarity. Now, while Tom's personal life is finally stabilizing, a massive dark cloud is gathering over the town.
Summer vacation arrives. Becky leaves town with her family for a holiday, but Tom can't enjoy the time off because it's time for Muff Potter's trial.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
The trial forces Tom and Huck to confront the terrible secret they swore to keep. They're constantly checking in with each other. Tom asks Huck in hushed tones if he has told anyone about the graveyard.
Huck swears he hasn't, but the guilt is becoming unbearable. Tom admits to Huck, "I'm sorry about Muff Potter. He's always friendly to us. He didn't kill the doctor. I want to help him."
In a desperate attempt to make themselves feel better, the boys sneak over to the jailhouse and pass food to Muff Potter through the bars.
Muff is incredibly grateful. He calls them good boys, which only twists the knife of guilt deeper into Tom's stomach.
The trial begins, and it's a spectacle. For 2 days, Tom and Huck sit in the back of the hot courtroom, listening to people present evidence against an innocent man.
Tom isn't sleeping at all. He's caught in an agonizing tug-of-war between his conscience urging him to save Muff and his paralyzing fear of Injun Joe's retaliation.
The pressure finally causes him to snap. On day 3, the courtroom is packed. The judge calls a new witness to the stand.
It's Tom Sawyer. The town is confused. A lawyer stands up and asks a very specific, terrifying question. "Where were you on the night of June 17th?
Tom answers, his voice shaking. "I was in the graveyard." The lawyer presses him. He asks who else was there.
Tom names them. Injun Joe, the doctor, and Muff Potter. He explains that he was hiding behind the large trees. The entire courtroom is hanging on his every word.
The lawyer asks exactly what he saw, and Tom, finding a reserve of courage he didn't know he possessed, tells the absolute truth.
He says Injun Joe and the doctor talked angrily. Then Injun Joe killed the doctor with his knife. Muff Potter didn't do it.
The reaction is instantaneous chaos. The people gasp, and in the confusion of everyone turning to look at him, Injun Joe moves with terrifying speed.
He crashes through a window and escapes the building before anyone can stop him.
The whiplash Tom experiences in the aftermath is extreme. During the day, he's the most famous person in town. People shake his hand. They call him a hero for saving Muff Potter's life.
He loves the attention. But when the sun goes down, the reality of what he has done sets in.
He tells Huck, "Injun Joe knows about us. He can kill us too. Tom has painted a massive target on his own back.
He's jumping at every shadow, convinced Injun Joe is waiting around the corner with a knife. He needs something, anything, to occupy his mind and distract him from the impending threat.
This desperate need for a distraction leads us straight into Chapter 7, Injun Joe's Treasure.
Tom finds Huck on a Saturday afternoon and proposes a classic distraction. I'm going to look for treasure.
Huck is skeptical but intrigued. He asks where they should even begin to look. Tom, using childhood logic, suggests they search an abandoned, creepy old house situated on a hill near the wealthy Mrs. Douglas's property.
Old houses are staples of childhood mythology. They head up the hill and quietly slip inside the dusty, decaying building.
They search the kitchen, find nothing, and move into the adjoining bedroom. Suddenly, they hear heavy footsteps on the wooden porch. They freeze.
Two men walk right into the kitchen they just vacated. Tom peeks through a crack in the wall, and his blood runs cold. It's Injun Joe, disguised, along with a rough-looking friend.
The boys are trapped. If they make a single sound, the floorboards will creak, and the murderer they testified against will find them isolated in an abandoned house.
They press themselves against the floor and listen. Injun Joe tells his friend that they need to hide the stolen money they're carrying.
He pulls out a knife, the exact same knife Tom saw him use in the graveyard, and starts prying up the floorboards in the kitchen.
As he's digging a hole in the dirt beneath the floor, the blade of his knife strikes something solid.
He clears the dirt away and uncovers a heavy wooden box. Using the knife as a lever, he breaks the lock and opens it. His friend gasps.
The box is filled to the brim with gold coins. They have accidentally stumbled upon an actual ancient buried treasure while trying to hide their own petty cash.
The friend is ecstatic. He suggests they leave the box hidden under the floorboards and come back for it the next day with a wagon.
But Injun Joe is paranoid. He shakes his head and says, "No, we're going to take it with us now. We can take it to that place. You know, the place under the cross."
The men gather up the heavy box and prepare to leave. But just before they walk out the door, Injun Joe stops and mutters something quietly to his friend, looking suspiciously toward the bedroom door.
The boys can't hear the exact words, but Tom's imagination fills in the blanks. Once them are gone, Tom whispers to Huck, "Did you hear that? He wants to kill us."
They sprint out of that house as fast as their legs can carry them. Now their motivation is completely split.
They're more terrified of Injun Joe than ever before, knowing he's in town and heavily armed, but they also know he possesses a box of unimaginable wealth, and they desperately want it.
They spend the next few weeks watching his old hideouts at night, trying to spot the treasure box, but they see nothing.
This dual tension, the hunt for wealth versus the fear of death, drives the narrative forward. But childhood attention spans are short, and the relentless fear is suddenly broken by a joyous event in Chapter 8.
It's August, and Becky finally returns from her family vacation. Tom is so elated to see her that the treasure and the murderer are completely wiped from his mind.
Becky's mother has finally organized the long-awaited Adventure Day picnic for the children.
To make it even more special, her mother agrees to let Becky sleep over at her best friend Susie Harper's house after the picnic, so she doesn't have to walk home in the dark.
The logistics of this picnic are important. The children all board a large steamboat which ferries them down the river and deposits them on a wooded shore.
They spend the afternoon running through the trees and eating. Eventually, someone points out the massive, gaping entrance of a local cave, and the group decides to explore it.
The cave is described as a massive, sprawling labyrinth of limestone tunnels. It's pitch black and freezing cold inside.
The children light candles and venture in, playing hide-and-seek among the rock formations. They laugh, scream, and scare each other until they are exhausted.
As the sun begins to set outside, they all filter back out of the cave, board the steamboat, and ride back to town, completely exhausted.
The next morning is Sunday. The town gathers at the church. Becky's mother, Mrs. Thatcher, sees Aunt Polly and Mrs. Harper talking.
She walks over and asks casually, "Where's my Becky? Did she sleep at your house?" Mrs. Harper looks confused and says, "No, she wasn't at my house."
Aunt Polly overhears this and feels a sudden jolt of panic. Tom hadn't come home the night before either. She asks Mrs. Harper, "Did Tom sleep at your house?"
Again, the answer is no. You can feel the oxygen leave the room as the adults realize something is terribly wrong. They start frantically questioning the other children. Did Tom and Becky come home on the boat?
The children shrug. They say it was dark, everyone was tired, and they simply didn't notice.
Finally, one of the older boys voices the thought that everyone is too terrified to say out loud, maybe they're in the cave.
The reaction is immediate. 200 men drop whatever they're doing, grab lanterns and ropes, and rush down the river toward the cave entrance.
The text tells us they search the dark tunnels for 3 agonizing days and nights, but find absolutely no trace of them. The town is paralyzed by grief.
While the entire town is focused on the tragedy at the caves, the narrative pivots sharply in Chapter 9 to focus on Huck Finn.
Huck wasn't invited on the steamboat picnic. He is a social outcast. So, while Tom was flirting with Becky, Huck was fulfilling their original mission, watching the streets at night, waiting for Injun Joe to emerge with the treasure.
Huck's patience is rewarded. Late Saturday night, around 11 o'clock, the door of a seedy tavern opens, and Injun Joe walks out with his friend.
The friend is carrying a heavy wooden box under his arm. Huck's heart races. He thinks, maybe that's the treasure box.
Without a second thought, he falls into step behind them, tracking them quietly through the darkened alleys of the town.
He follows them as they hike up the large hill toward the edge of town, right to the wrought iron fence surrounding Mrs. Douglas's massive estate. The men stop and hide in the shadows of her yard.
Huck crouches behind a small bush nearby, straining to hear their conversation. What he overhears has nothing to do with buried treasure. It is a calculated plot for murder.
Injun Joe is staring at the large house. He tells his friend that he intends to break in and violently attack Mrs. Douglas. His justification is purely vindictive.
He explains, Mr. Douglas was bad to me. He's dead now, but I remember. He plans to punish the widow for the perceived slights of her late husband.
His friend is nervous. He points out that several lamps are still lit inside the house, indicating that she might have guests or staff awake. He suggests they abandon the plan and come back the next night.
But Injun Joe is consumed by hatred. He refuses to leave. He whispers, no, let's wait now. When the lights go out, we go in.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we reach the moral climax of Huckleberry Finn's character arc.
Huck owes this town nothing. The civilized people constantly reject him, insult him, and tell their children he is trash. He has every reason to sneak away, protect himself, and let society deal with its own problems.
Yet the text points out a crucial detail. Huck actually likes Mrs. Douglas because she has always been kind to him, giving him food when others chased him away.
Confronted with the imminent murder of the only adult who showed him kindness, Huck makes a choice. He quietly backs away from the bush, slipping out of the yard.
Once he hits the dirt road, he runs faster than he has ever run in his life. He sprints down the hill to the home of a sturdy, reliable man named Mr. Jones. He pounds on the heavy wooden door until Mr. Jones opens it, holding a lantern.
Huck is gasping for air, but he manages to blurt out the entire threat. Injun Joe and his friend are in Mrs. Douglas's yard. They want to kill her. Can you go there and help Mrs. Douglas?
Mr. Jones immediately understands the gravity of the situation. He grabs his rifle, calls for his strong adult sons to arm themselves, and tells Huck to run home and stay safe.
The next morning, Huck creeps back to Mr. Jones's house to find out the aftermath of the raid. Mr. Jones welcomes him in and explains that Mrs. Douglas is unharmed.
When he and his sons approached the yard with their guns, the intruders heard them coming and fled into the woods. They saved her life.
But Huck's reaction isn't one of pride. It's pure terror. He knows that if Injun Joe finds out who tipped off the rescue party, he will hunt Huck down without hesitation.
He grabs Mr. Jones's arm and begs, please don't say my name to Mrs. Douglas. Mr. Jones looks at the boy and realizes Huck is physically shaking, exhausted, and running a high fever from the sheer adrenaline and stress.
He gently guides Huck to a spare bedroom and tells him to sleep.
Later that day, Mrs. Douglas comes down the hill to personally thank Mr. Jones for intervening. She believes Mr. Jones was patrolling the area by chance.
But Mr. Jones refuses to take false credit. He tells her the truth. We didn't know the men were there. A boy was there and he wanted to help you. He came here, but I can't say his name.
Think about the profound irony here. The boy who never steps foot in a church, who doesn't know how to read, who sleeps in empty barrels, is the only person in town who actually practices the morality that the rest of the town preaches.
He risks his own life to save a vulnerable widow. But the physical toll is immense. While the rest of the men are at the church learning that Tom and Becky are missing, Huck is confined to a bed, violently ill with a fever.
Mrs. Douglas, unaware that he is her savior, insists on staying by his bedside to nurse him back to health.
As Huck battles his fever, the narrative plunges us back into the suffocating darkness of Chapter 10. We return to the cave.
On the day of the picnic, Tom and Becky had wandered away from the main group, playfully exploring the winding tunnels, turning corner after corner until they stopped by an underground spring.
Becky suddenly realized how quiet it was. She asked Tom what time it was, and Tom, realizing they had been walking for hours, admitted he didn't know.
They turn around to head back to the entrance, but the cave is a complex three-dimensional maze. They take a tunnel, realize it's the wrong one, try another, and quickly lose all sense of direction.
The reality sets in. They are hopelessly lost. Panic is a contagious disease in a survival situation. Becky begins to cry. She's exhausted and terrified. She wants to just sit down and wait for the adults to find them.
Tom knows that sitting still in a freezing cave is a death sentence. He gives her the last piece of cake he had in his pocket and tells her to rest while he takes his candle and explores the immediate area for a way out.
He ties a kite string to a rock so he can find his way back to her and ventures into the blackness.
As he's feeling his way along a damp stone wall, he turns a corner and sees a flicker of light. He moves toward it, hoping to find a rescue party.
But the figure holding the candle is not a rescuer. Tom freezes in absolute horror. Standing just a few feet away, using the cave as a hideout from the authorities, is Injun Joe.
Imagine the terror. You are starving, freezing, buried under thousands of tons of rock, and you bump into the armed murderer who wants to kill you.
Tom is so startled he gasps out loud. The sound echoes. Injun Joe turns, but in the dim light, he's just as startled. Thinking it might be the police, Injun Joe immediately turns and sprints away into the deeper tunnels.
Tom scrambles back along his string to Becky, and here we see the most significant evidence of his maturation into a leader. He arrives panting and terrified, but he makes a calculated choice to withhold information.
He doesn't tell Becky he just saw the murderer. He knows that her psychological state is incredibly fragile. If he tells her they are trapped in a dark box with a killer, she will lose her mind.
He bears the weight of that terrifying knowledge completely alone so she can maintain a shred of hope.
They spend 3 days in that sensory deprivation chamber. By Tuesday, Becky is entirely physically broken. She tells Tom she cannot take another step and is ready to die there.
Tom refuses to give up. He tells her to stay strong, leaves her in the dark, and pushes himself to explore one final, unexplored side tunnel.
He crawls on his hands and knees for what feels like miles until, impossibly, he sees a tiny speck of natural sunlight.
He claws his way toward it and discovers a small natural crack in the rock face that leads outside. He rushes back, practically carries Becky to the opening, and pushes her through.
They emerge miles downstream from the main entrance. They flag down some passing men in a skiff who feed them and row them back to town.
They arrive late Tuesday night, and the town erupts into a massive celebration. The text notes that Tom spends the entire night recounting the harrowing details of their escape to anyone who will listen.
The children are safe, but the plot lines haven't tied together yet. Chapter 11, In the Cave. Again, jumps the timeline forward by 2 weeks.
Tom and Becky have spent this time resting in bed, recovering from the physical trauma of starvation and exposure. Tom finally feels well enough to walk over to Becky's house for a visit. He's chatting with her father, Judge Thatcher, in the parlor.
Judge Thatcher is a stern, practical man. He praises Tom for keeping his daughter alive, and then casually mentions that he has solved the problem of the cave permanently.
He states, people can't go into it now because it has a new big door. He explains that he had his men bolt a massive iron door over the entrance, secured with triple locks, so no child can ever wander in again.
The judge expects Tom to be relieved, but instead, Tom turns deathly pale. He jumps up and screams. But Injun Joe's living in the cave.
The irony is dark and absolute. The heavy iron door, designed to protect the children, became a tomb for the killer.
A group of men, with Tom leading the way, rush down to the river, unlock the massive door, and swing it open. Lying just inside the entrance, dead from starvation and thirst, is Injun Joe.
He had tried to hack his way out with his knife, but the iron was too thick.
The villain is dead. The immediate threat to Tom and Huck's lives is permanently erased. And the second Injun Joe's body is removed, Tom's brain immediately shifts gears back to his primary obsession, the gold.
A few days later, she runs over to Mr. Jones's house, where Huck is still recovering from his fever. Tom rushes into the bedroom and lays out his theory.
He tells Huck, the money isn't in Injun Joe's house, it's in the cave. I know, because Injun Joe was there. Let's get it.
Huck is extremely hesitant. The thought of going back into a dark space terrifies him, and he assumes the cave is too vast to ever find a single wooden box.
But Tom has a strategic advantage. He explains that they don't have to use the main entrance or wander the maze. He knows exactly where the secret small hole is that he and Becky crawled out of.
If they enter through the back door, they can bypass miles of tunnels and go straight to the area where Tom bumped into Injun Joe.
The logic is sound. and the lure of $12,000 is too strong for Huck to resist. That afternoon, they borrow a small boat, gather some tools, and row downstream to the hidden crack in the rocks.
They light their candles, squeeze through the opening, and navigate the short distance to the spot where Tom saw the murderer. They begin carefully examining the walls and floor in the flickering light.
Tom is scanning the rock formations when he spots a detail that changes everything. He points a trembling finger at the cave wall and shouts, "Look, there's a cross."
Someone has burned the shape of a cross onto the stone using candle smoke. Tom remembers the exact words Injun Joe spoke in the haunted house, the place under the cross.
The boys drop to their knees. Tom pulls out his knife and begins frantically digging into the hard clay floor beneath the marked rock.
Just as it happened in the haunted house, the blade of his knife strikes solid wood. They scrape away the dirt and pull up the heavy iron-bound box. They pry it open, and the gold coins are still there, glittering in the candlelight.
It's the ultimate triumph. But practically speaking, two young boys cannot carry a heavy chest filled with solid gold for miles.
Tom, always planning ahead, had brought several sturdy canvas bags with them. They transfer the thousands of coins into the bags, abandon the heavy wooden box, squeeze back out of the secret hole, and load their fortune into the skiff.
This brings us to the grand finale of the narrative, Chapter 12, at Mrs. Douglas's house. The boys row back to town, dock the boat, and are struggling to carry these incredibly heavy bags up the dirt road.
Tom suggests they temporarily hide the bags in the abandoned house near Mrs. Douglas's estate until they can figure out a permanent plan.
But as they're sweating and dragging the bags past her yard, Mr. Jones spots them from the porch. He calls out, telling them to hurry up and come inside, explaining that a lot of people are waiting for them.
He practically shows them through the front door of Mrs. Douglas's mansion.
Mrs. Douglas intercepts them in the hallway. She takes one look at their filthy, mud-covered clothes and ushers them into a guest bedroom. Laid out on the bed are completely new, clean clothes, stiff shirts, and new jeans.
She orders them to wash the cave dirt off their hands and faces, put on the clean clothes, and join everyone in the main parlor.
The boys reluctantly clean themselves up and walk into the parlor. The room is packed with the most important people in town. The judge, the mayor, Aunt Polly. It's a formal gathering.
Mrs. Douglas stands at the front of the room and addresses the crowd. She formally and publicly thanks Mr. Jones and his sons for bravely defending her home from Injun Joe.
Mr. Jones is a man of profound integrity. He stops her right there. He refuses to let the narrative be rewritten by class distinctions.
He points directly at Huck Finn, the boy, in the oversized, uncomfortable new clothes, and announces to the wealthy crowd, "Huck helped too. He's the one who warned us."
The crowd is stunned. Mrs. Douglas turns to Huck with tears in her eyes. She tells him he's a brave, good boy. And then she makes an announcement that she believes is the ultimate reward.
She says, "I want to give you a home and some money. You will live here with me."
From an adult societal perspective, this is a miraculous intervention. She is offering to rescue a homeless child from poverty, educate him, and integrate him into respectable society.
But Tom Sawyer simply cannot allow someone else to deliver the climax of the evening. He recognizes the theatrical potential of the moment and seizes it.
He loudly interrupts her generous speech. But Huck has a lot of money. He declares to the room.
He dramatically runs out into the hallway, grabs the heavy canvas bags they drag from the river, hauls them into the center of the elegant parlor, and dumps the gold coins out onto the carpet.
The visual contrast is stunning. You have the wealthiest people in town staring in absolute shock at a pile of gold that dwarfs their own fortunes, and it belongs to the two most rebellious kids in the county.
The text specifies the amount, $12,000. To contextualize that, in the late 1800s, a grown man might earn $1 a day for hard labor. $12,000 is generational, unimaginable wealth.
The room erupts into questions, and Tom joyfully spends the next hour recounting their entire adventure, the haunted house, the secret cross, the digging in the cave.
They are celebrated as absolute heroes. They are rich, their enemies are vanquished, and they are adored by everyone. It seems like the perfect, tidy, happily ever after.
But Mark Twain is a realist, and he understands human nature too well to end it there. The final chapter, Chapter 13, is titled Huck's New Home, and it presents a profound philosophical dilemma that unravels the neatness of the happy ending.
So what does this all mean for Huck?
At first, it seems like Huck conforms. He moves into the massive mansion with Mrs. Douglas. The text notes he becomes a new person. His daily routine is entirely dictated by society.
He is forced to wash his face and hands every single day with harsh soap. He is forced to wear stiff, clean clothes that restrict his movement. He is forced to sit quietly at a desk in school, and he's forced to sit still on hard wooden pews in church on Sundays.
The author then delivers a simple, devastating sentence. But he wasn't happy. Huck endures this suffocating, structured existence for exactly 3 weeks. Then the pressure becomes too much.
He sneaks out of the mansion, sheds his clean clothes, puts on his old rags, and disappears. He runs away from the money, the safety, and the education.
Tom panics and spends days searching the back alleys and riverbanks until he finally tracks Huck down, hiding out in an empty wooden barrel behind an old slaughterhouse.
Tom demands to know why he abandoned a perfect life. Huck's response is a heartbreaking defense of personal liberty.
Huck says, "Mrs. Douglas is a good woman. I like her, but I can't live with her." He explicitly lists the constraints of civilization as acts of torture. He hates the rigid schedule. He hates the physical discomfort of the clothes. He hates the oppressive silence of the schoolroom and the church.
Most importantly, he says, I don't want to have a lot of money. He realizes that wealth doesn't buy freedom, it buys obligations. He just wants his old life back, where he could sleep under the stars and be Tom's friend.
And this is where we witness Tom's final and arguably most manipulative act of the entire story. Tom understands that he cannot convince Huck with logic about the benefits of education or hygiene.
But he knows exactly what Huck values most in the world, their friendship and the thrill of their imaginary outlaw gang.
Tom looks at Huck and coldly says, "No, I can't be your friend because the boys at school don't want to play with you." He invents a new, exclusive club.
He tells Huck that they are planning massive new adventures, maybe even becoming robbers, but there is a strict entry requirement. Huck cannot be in the gang unless he lives with Mrs. Douglas, goes to school, and proves he is respectable.
It's emotional blackmail. Tom weaponizes Huck's deepest desire for connection and adventure to force him into compliance. Huck is devastated at the thought of being excluded from the gang.
He wrestles with the decision and finally reluctantly surrenders. He sighs and says, maybe I can live with Mrs. Douglas. I don't know, but I'm going to try it again for a month.
Tom immediately rewards his submission by inviting him to a midnight initiation meeting, and Huck is momentarily thrilled.
This raises an important question, and it highlights a profound irony. Tom Sawyer, the boy who spent the entire book running away from school, tricking people into doing his chores, and breaking every rule Aunt Polly set, is the very instrument that forces Huck Finn into the cage of societal conformity.
Tom uses the illusion of a wild, rebellious gang to trick his friend into becoming a civilized citizen.
It leaves you with a very complicated feeling. Is it a happy ending? Huck is rich and safe, but his spirit is essentially broken. He is forcing himself to endure a life he hates just to maintain his social connections.
Which perfectly demonstrates the goal of this entire deep dive. By reading this Level 1 English text, you haven't just practiced vocabulary words like cave, treasure, or medicine.
You've engaged with a complex, ambiguous debate about the nature of freedom versus security. You've analyzed how simple, direct language can convey manipulation, terror, and profound moral compromises.
Exactly. When you practice your English speaking, you don't need to construct massive, tangled sentences to express deep thoughts. Think about Tom saying, "I like painting," or Tom saying, "I did it," or Huck saying, "I can't live with her."
The power is in the directness of the emotion behind the words. That is the ultimate takeaway for your language journey.
As we wrap up this session, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own. Consider Huck's dilemma at the very end of the story. He trades his absolute freedom for the security of $12,000, a warm bed, and the conditional acceptance of his peers.
Ask yourself, in your own life, where do you draw the line between security and freedom? What tasks or obligations feel like painting a fence on a Saturday morning? And how could you change your internal narrative to frame them as an adventure?
It has been a pleasure analyzing this test with you today. Keep reading, keep asking questions, and keep looking for the deep meaning behind simple words. We will see you next time.